Welcome to Night Hacking at the JavaLand conference. My name's Stephen Chin. I'm the Java Community Manager. I've been traveling around Europe, visiting different user groups on motorcycle with Sebastian Daschner. We're here at the JavaLand conference doing live stream interviews with luminaries like David Blevins from Tommy Tribe. How are you doing, David?
Very well, Stephen. How are you doing today?
Good, good.
Yeah.
Lots of fun. We're in a theme park. Of course it's...
I mean, who can complain about roller coasters during a theme park?
Yeah. It would be pretty hard to not be happy about being at Fantasyland. But we're gonna chat a little bit about Java EE stuff. Remind me again what we're talking about.
What's that?
Remind me again what we're talking about.
Yes.
Interviews today.
Well, it's pretty easy for you to forget because that's kind of the reason that I'm bringing it to JavaLand. It's a rare
connectors.
Connectors, exactly,
Yes. Oh.
exactly. And it's really like symbolic that you forgot because the whole world forgot about them. And they're actually quite interesting.
I wrote a JCA implementation like years ago.
Did you?
Yeah.
You have my condolences. You survived it?
Yeah, I survived it and I built a working connector architecture, but it was for a custom. It was for a custom event-driven, staged event-driven EE implementation we were building out for some reason for a startup, which folded a month after I finished the project.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean,
perhaps
you started out on the right foot.
Yeah. Okay, but let's talk more about you. So, I'm going to pop up your screen here. It looks like
sure.
you have Intel.
Yeah, I've got a couple little connector examples here. So, you can get all of these connectors here. There's a little site we have for.
Open source and Java EE goodness.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the primary thing that's been wrong with connectors is no one really understands them. So bookmark that URL and everything that I'm showing is going to be downloadable from this. It's all, of course, open source.
Chatterbox is the project.
Chatterbox, right. So the little known thing about connectors and MDBs, in fact, is that MDBs are actually not JMS driven. They're actually driven by connectors. So kind of in the EJB, 2.1 time frame, we disconnected MDBs from JMS, readapted them to connectors, and then didn't tell anybody. And so the whole world didn't really realize that we had actually made it possible to do dramatically different things with an MDB that you could do before.
Yeah.
And since we never really had any use cases other than JMS, well, the potential continued to go unnoticed.
Yeah.
There were actually some opportunities missed in EJB 3.0, for example. The way you used to configure a connector was like this hash map thing at the top of the class. It was awful. And so we kind of asked the question, why not be able to do things like in JAX-RS style, like all annotation driven. And so we made some changes in EE7, and now this is actually possible. So there's a good reason to come back and take a look at this technology than there had been previously. So you may have looked at it, and it may have, turned you off, rightfully so. A little bit dusty, a lot of bit dusty.
Yeah.
I think when we went to get this changes in EE7, over there at the Oracle side of the fence, they were just scraping around for people. Who knows this? Where's the guy? And as well, we're kind of all dusting off all of our
You're dusting
knowledge.
Skeletons off that fell out of the closets.
Everybody who was involved in getting the change in had to oh yeah, what does this mean again? And so it's pretty crazy. All right, so I'm going to see if I can go through as many of these as we can. I've got about 4.
Okay.
If we can do maybe 2-3 minutes. So a fun one, and the really fun thing about connectors is you don't have to do everything over HTTP.
Yeah.
I think that's sort of the modern hubris, is that everything's got to be HTTP, and there's like protocols going back through the hills. And what we do as developers is we go, oh, cool, I like it. I'm going to have to get a little client for this, adapt it, throw a REST endpoint out, and now I can call it in my enterprise. It's like, well, what about all the native clients that you have? So, these are the things that we miss. So here I have two separate projects. Let me see if I can find the other one. Oh, there it is. See, here I have simply a samples project. So I have the actual connector and the beans split. So here's what a modern day MDB might look like that consumes an email message. And this is basically an API that we just kind of made up.
Yeah.
And so it's a very JAX-RS inspired API. So you have a subject and you filter on it. And you can get various parts of the incoming email message injected into you via parameter injection, just like JAX-RS style.
Yeah, that's nice.
So this one isn't going to do anything fancy, just simply going to log. But I can go ahead and boot this thing up. Come on. There we go. Go over to this window. All right. Okay. So I have this one configured to connect to Gmail and a little account that I set up.
I'm going to
increase
even
my
though
font.
These guys are fine. No, the brightness is.
Oh, too dark?
Yeah, make it a little brighter. Yeah, thank you. See, you do the same thing with my keyboard. I remap the function.
Yeah, of course. Anybody who uses IntelliJ debugs will want to.
Yeah, nice.
Unless you don't use a debugger, in which case you might not need. All right, so. Oh, do I got another one of these running already? JPS. Okay. Standard server already running exception.
Yep.
Well, that's not a server already running exception. What is going on with this terminal? I cannot seem to go up. All right. For some reason, I can't scroll up and see my own output. Okay. This is the disadvantage of having not sacrificed a chicken before doing your demo.
Yeah, well.
I got a tip on Twitter from Sebastian Blanc that I should do Windows CDs as a sacrifice. That probably would have been better.
That would make the world a better place.
Okay. Oh. All right, well. Let's try from a different spot. Actually, I need to rebuild. Okay, this is not to boot, this is to rebuild. Of course, I went and released this last night and changed all the version numbers, so I might be getting bit.
Yeah, no, I always like, right before my presentations, I always like to do a little bit of development and make sure that I have something new and shiny that won't work.
I definitely got that covered. If we don't do this one, I'll go to another one that I know does work, because I tried it before we...
It's always more interesting for the audience when it actually does work, because then they can see that you're a real developer. You didn't just rip off someone else's code off of Stack Trace.
Stack Overflow,
Stack
right.
Overflow, thanks.
I saw a fictitious book title the other day that said, copying and pasting off of Stack Overflow. That was pretty good. All right, we're going to abort this one because it doesn't work. I have to fix this up before my talk at 4.
Yeah, this is a demo for your talk later.
All right, all right. Well, let's do another one that I'm going to go straight to one that does work. Where is the samples? Okay. So we're going to try instead a Twitter connector.
Oh, Twitter, our favorite API for testing everything.
Exactly. Twitter can't let me down. Okay. Fingers crossed. Well, that one seems to be happy.
Yeah,
so I got to check
very
my
nice.
configuration on my other one when I have actually time to boot it up. Okay. So I made a little bot. His name is Norm. And so Norm will engage in a little dialogue with me.
Cool.
And so if I say, hey, tribe Norm, and then I say, hey, Norm, knock, knock. So I tweet to Norm. Let's see if my little Twitter client will. Well, there we go. Norm responds, says, who's
Oh.
there? I say, Dwayne. Dwayne who? Okay. Dwayne the
I think
bathtub.
you're, you misspelled Dwayne the first time, but I would stick with the misspelled version to
Well-
not confuse.
Oh yeah.
Norm
Well,
bot.
I know this particular code doesn't care, but hey, I will misspell it to go ride with it. Dwayne the bathtub, I'm drowning. I says, that's a good one. I'll have to remember that. Yeah, thanks, Norm. That's very patronizing of you.
Yeah,
And
he's
you
a
know,
nice guy.
yeah. I mean, I can
That's
ask.
actually, I think I've had Twitter conversations with that before
Yeah,
about at that level.
pretty much. Norm's got a little bit of a sense of humor, though, so. So I say, Norm. Or if I do it like this.
Knock knock.
Yeah, a little louder. Let's see, hope that one works. Yeah, not so loud, you're giving me a headache. He doesn't like it when I say knock knock very loud.
Yeah.
So we're gonna go for one more knock knock. We'll just milk these knock knock jokes because they work. Just plain up knock knock. Oh. Say who's there? Banana. You ever do that one as a kid? You say knock knock who's there and banana, and then you like repeat it forever
I
and
had
ever.
it done
Knock
to
knock
me.
who's there?
Does
Banana.
That count?
Knock knock who's there? Banana.
Yeah,
Knock knock who's
yeah.
there? Orange. Orange. You glad I didn't say banana again?
Yeah.
It's a really horrible one.
It's pretty bad, and I never used it. But then
Yeah.
other people thought it was clever, and they used it on me, and I didn't understand why.
Well, you're the one who told them the joke,
No.
and then they try to use it.
No.
Norm doesn't like it. He says, "Orange, you glad I didn't say banana again? Try again. Who's there?" And you know we can continue to go.
Yeah. See, that's the sort of kid I was growing up.
Yeah,
I didn't
so-
play along very well.
So this is all done. It's stateful communication via a connector, and it's all something that you can do in these things that you write. So we'll take a look at a little bit at the code and how this was kind of put together. So in my project, I have a little Twitter resource adapter.
Cool.
Here we go. And resource adapters are fundamentally very easy to really understand. You have 4 methods that you got to implement. Start the resource adapter, stop the resource adapter. That happens when the container starts up and when the container shuts down.
Yeah.
It's effectively server start, server stop. So here we go. We have our start method. We go ahead and log. We use the standard Twitter streaming client. We just register our keys with it. And then we go ahead and call run. So with the Twitter streaming client, you actually kind of register a callback, and it just keeps feeding you information.
Cool.
So it's a very good example of what you might do with a connector, because you would have something that's a long-running type of process. In a connector, you can start.
And whenever a tweet comes in, it's like it's feeding it into the connector.
Right. So what it does is then, every time a bean is deployed, an MDB, we call endpoint activation endpoint. Endpoint activation is called on the connector by the container.
Yep.
It feeds it the bean, and we can effectively take this factory and create instances of the bean. So message endpoint is actually going to be a subclass of whatever bean type that we can cast it, I should say, to whatever bean type that the person developed. So I'll show you our Twitter bean in a moment. So basically what we do is then we just register these, and then we have a little thread that wakes up and grabs and does all the annotation processing and goes and invokes the responses and so on and so forth. You just have to, before you deliver a message to the bean, you just simply have to call before delivery, you do your magic invocation, and then after delivery. Mm-hmm. Those are the only 4 methods that you need. Start, stop, deploy, undeploy, well, I guess 6, and then when you go ahead and deliver messages, before and after.
Yeah.
Real simple API. It's actually exceedingly simple. Outbound connectors, not simple. They're really, really complicated. Inbound connectors,
simple.
Really, really simple. So our little API has a JAX-RS-inspired set of annotations at tweet, which is basically like at path.
Yep.
He does the selection. The text comes in. We treat it not too much different than a URI. In fact, in this code, we stole or forked the little CXF template code that does all the matching up across the top. So you can use that exact syntax in the tweets, and you can get parts of the Twitter feed kind of injected into your parameters. Cool. So if we look at our Twitter class here, we have our knock knock bean. So here it says, oops, come back.
Oh, yeah. It's kind of nice. So you're going to pick a regex and it calls the appropriate.
Yeah, exactly. So here's where I said knock knock too loudly, and all it did is respond with a string, not so loud you're giving me a headache. And it's a simple API. You return string. So this is very JAX-RS inspired. Yep. The return type is obviously going to be the response to the person. And here's a little fun kind of play, and this is how we got those dialogues to work. We entered in kind of an alternate state. So when we first start out, all the messages come into this top level class. We select a method, and then I have a JAX-RS inspired response builder. So when someone says just regular old knock knock, and it's not a loud knock knock, we simply say who's there, and then we pass a new instance of this object. What the connector knows, it goes, okay, the next time someone says something, I'm going to use this class to find the next set of possible responses.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so we're effectively pushing dialogue onto kind of a state machine. And so this would be like if REST was stateful, and you could change the URIs based upon the last thing that they said.
Yeah.
And so it's very clever. So here we're just doing a plain old match on who. So whatever the response is, either one of these 2 methods are going to get invoked.
Cool.
Either they're just going to say who they're talking about, in which case, we have a little joke in here. If someone says who and they say themselves, like, knock knock, who's there? D. Blevins. They're like, don't you know how knock knock jokes work? You're supposed to say a funny name that you can turn into a joke. So if someone is so lame that they actually respond with themselves,
Nice.
you can give them a funny little thing. So we actually go just a couple little objects deep, and once this is finished, it goes right back to the top. And we in fact have other Twitter-inspired things that we can do. So if someone says, right now, because the bot is still running, if they tweet to, where is it, Tribe Norm, and mention night hacking, they will get a response saying, hey, night hacking, Stephen Chin is like an extremely technical version of the Fonz with robots. The motorcycles.
I think that's
a compliment.
Yeah.
I think it's a compliment. You can probably jump.
I saw enough Happy Days that I never really associated myself with Fonz, but
Well, it's the bike.
yeah.
It's the bike.
Maybe I need to get a bit new hairdo.
I think it works. It's the modern version. You're not Jewish, though, are you?
No.
No? No. Yeah, the Fonz was actually, yeah, anyway, so it was pretty crazy. So, yeah, we have many different hashtags that we'll respond to, and you can even tweet to Norm about math. So we'll do some basic math.
Yeah. Norm's pretty smart.
So the potential of connectors is that you get to write the API. So this is the project that implements the connector. And then you can have, this is the project that implements the connector itself. You make an API. You make a connector that understands that API. You wrap it up into a RAR file. People can chuck it into their server.
Yeah.
And then you just simply make these MDBs. And as you can see, there's only
I
three.
think this is really good because, a lot of people didn't even know this was something which you could easily do.
Yeah, I think the motivation for us to writing all these connectors, so we have an IMAP connector. That worked until I messed with it around this morning. And then, a Slack connector. And then an XMPP for Google Chat. And we actually use these ourselves, so we're a support company, and so, we have, of course, a stable version that we use. And so we're able to broadcast, things throughout. If an issue happens, we can ping people on Slack, ping people on email, ping people on XMPP, and do all the broadcasting, all with code that's about this big, that has absolutely no plumbing of the Twitter API in it. I think that's the really great thing about JAX-RS versus servlets. So servlets, you have to choke down this abstract, sort of large coarse-grained class, HTTP servlet request and HTTP servlet response, and you got to parse things in and out. And I think one of the things that JAX-RS showed us how to do is, I should want this support to bend to me. And I should be able to describe what I want out of that, and it should pluck all that stuff out.
Yeah.
Coerce it into the right data types, and then send it into me, invoke this method, and then I end up with very little business logic.
Yeah, and that's nice. It's a much higher level API for working with
we got, half a dozen methods more than I was like 8 or something. If I had to write all of the plumbing code using the actual Twitter client API, and parse messages and pluck out data, I'd be looking at a couple hundred lines of code easily, unless I of course went to the effort of abstracting it out. So abstract it out, make that a connector, make other people who want to use that stuff just use your API.
Cool.
And I would recommend people taking strong design cues from the JAX-RS style of APIs. So this is a new thing that you can do as of Java EE 7. The change is basically an MDB still has to have a message listener interface. So JMS message listener is a message listener interface. It has a method in it, though. In the new style, if you have no methods, basically the container goes, oh, I will give you like an actual proxy that implements all the methods of the bean, and you can inspect that class for annotations and do what you need to do. So it's pretty neat. Yeah, so let's show the go back to the site. You can check it out. So we have a bunch of different projects over here. So we actually have a fun one called Sheldon, which I showed an earlier version of this on a previous night hacking with you.
Yeah.
And this one actually allows you to SSH into a machine and execute similar style commands. And you got command completion and everything. And so you can log in with username and password, and you can execute stuff, and it will print it all out, and does the help and all that stuff. So that's Sheldon, and of course Chatterboxes.
Yeah, I think Norm's pretty nice. Knock-knock jokes are a winner.
I like knock-knock jokes. Everyone has to do. Ironically, you show an SSH one and people go, "That's really awesome." You show a Twitter one and people go, "Oh, I can use that now." so it's pretty neat.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things I think that hasn't gone anywhere in the industry because the API interaction with the connector and the MDB was a little bit preventative of doing modern things. You couldn't use annotations before Java EE 7. So now that you can, we just sort of wanted to write a bunch of examples of connectors so people could figure out how to do them. We actually have some starter projects. If you go to the bottom of the page, I won't show them to you, but we have several examples of starter projects that have like 2-3 classes in them.
Cool.
So you can fork it, you can change some things, and it has all the basic layout with dummy logic in there, and all you got to do is plumb in your logic. And this would be the one that you would want to go to. And it's a good one.
Okay, so I think this has been a really good topic on something which folks probably already forgot about.
Sure, yeah.
But it's new and interesting now because you can use it with Twitter.
Once you have a Twitter API for it, then it's finished.
Then it's relevant.
It's like the modern version of all software isn't finished until it can send email.
Yeah.
And the whole Emacs expression. It's not finished until you can send something from Twitter.
From Twitter. All right, so thanks very much for the interview on the live night hacking stage, David.
Sure.
So hang out here for just a sec. I'm going to cut the recording.
Awesome.